Tomten's Christmas Porridge. Imaginative art highlights this delightful story of the Tomten. Each picture offers a glimpse of Christmas in a Scandinavian home. Throughout Scandinavia, the Tomten has many names: the Nisse, the Christmas elf, and the house gnome. But no matter where he appears, the Tomten watches over the farm, the home, and the family. He awaits only one single gift for all his service: a bowl of sweet Christmas porridge with a little pat of butter. Nothing more. But when a family forgets... This is a book that I grew up with, and you can see here that I've had it since my very first Christmas the year I was born. This book has detailed illustrations with little critters in the background who are having their own little adventures. See if you can spot any of these guys as the story goes along. It was Christmas Eve, and snow lay white and heavy on the ground. Darkness was drawing near, but lights were brightly shining in the kitchen and dining room where the table was being set for Christmas dinner. Before long, the guests would arrive. From up in the hayloft, Papa Tomten and his daughter Polka kept watch over the farm. Peering out through the woodpecker holes, they saw Oscar, the farmhand, fill his baskets with firewood. "Watch how careful he is not to dirty his good clothes," said Papa Tomten. "You don't see him in a suit very often." "Look, Papa," said Polka. "Their father's coming back from the train station with a sleigh full of relatives. Soon the children will follow their cousins out to the barn and feed the cattle for their Christmas food. And then later," said Papa Tomten as he smiled and stroked his beard, "they'll come back and set out a bowl of Christmas porridge for the Tomten." "Christmas porridge?" Polka laughed. "There's nothing special about that. Isn't Mama's just as good?" "Perhaps," Papa Tomten answered. "But it's not just the porridge that's special. When the farm family sets out a bowl for the Tomten, it's to show that they respect him. It means they're thankful for what he does and that they're afraid to upset him. An angry Tomten can bring sadness and misfortune to a farm. So if I'm not shown respect, I become angry. You see, Polka, when the Tomten has worked the entire year, nay and dight." Polka laughed. "Papa, you said nay and dight," she teased. "Don't you mean day and night?" Papa Tomten tried to keep a straight face, but he couldn't. "Some day," he warned, "I'll teach you to make fun of your old papa, but not right now." He took her hand and danced around the hayloft. "It's Christmas Eve and time to eat our Christmas dinner." "And then," cried Polka, "and then we'll go see Santa Claus." "And then," said Papa Tomten, imitating his daughter, "and then I'll eat my bowl of Christmas porridge." The Tomtens lived in the hayloft behind a door that only they could see. From the outside, you couldn't imagine that anyone lived inside the wall. But when you passed through the door, you could see how large the room was and how much space the Tomten family had. At that very moment, Mama Tomten was setting the table, and Polka's brother Polka stood behind the kettle on the fire. He was almost 11 and tall enough to have the honor of stirring the kettle for the year's finest meal, Christmas dinner. Tomtens don't eat meat, so they don't serve the traditional Christmas ham. Instead, they prepare a soup from the herbs, berries, and mushrooms they have gathered throughout the year. They bake bread from 4 different kinds of flour, and they brew an amazing beer, which is sweeter and weaker the younger Tomtens are, and stronger and more potent the older they are. So little Polka, who is only 4 years old, can drink as much as her Grandpa Tomten, who is 427. Papa Tomten and Polka told the other Tomtens what the farm family was doing, but Mama Tomten was only half listening. She was troubled with a serious problem. All Mother Tomtens knew what important things are happening, even if they can't see them with their own eyes. But not only that, all Mother Tomtens can see the important things that are about to happen. That's the reason why a Mama Tomten can say to a Papa Tomten, "An ember has fallen out of the fire. Quick, run and put it out." Or, "Little Anna is going to fall out of bed. Hurry and set a chair there." But the serious matter that troubled Mama Tomten was that the farm family would not set out the bowl of Christmas porridge for their Tomten, Papa Tomten. The farm family had become very careless in recent years, ever since the first visit of Santa Claus. The Tomten who live in the hayloft didn't seem so important anymore. The children didn't even bother with him. They couldn't see any sense in setting a bowl of Christmas porridge out in the barn for the Tomten when Santa Claus had just been there. Why? They no longer understood the difference between Santa Claus and the Tomten. It had happened once before, many years ago, but they had forgotten about it now. Papa Tomten had become so angry that he made the whole farm family unhappy for an entire year. Just think how angry he must have been, Papa Tomten, who was usually so kind. Well, Mama Tomten knew that they would forget Papa Tomten's Christmas porridge again this year, and she had to do something about it. She couldn't bear to see the farm family unhappy. "Aren't you going to eat your Christmas porridge, my boy?" Grandpa Tomten asked Papa Tomten. "I don't want any porridge," little Pilka interrupted. "It's a bit early," said Papa Tomten. "We should eat our Christmas soup first, and then—" "Perhaps you want me to carry the bowl," Grandpa Tomten laughed. Papa Tomten hesitated. All he could think about was the Christmas porridge. So why shouldn't he go and get it now? "I'll just go have a look," he said. "You never know." As soon as he had gone, Mama Tomten took Polka and Polka aside to a corner where Grandpa and little Pilka couldn't hear them. "You mustn't breathe a word of this to your papa," she whispered. "You have to help me. Tonight, the farm family will forget to set out your papa's Christmas porridge, so we're going to have to get the bowl ourselves. We need to remind them that the Tomtens are still here. But remember, no one can see us. No one. A Tomten who is seen by a man, woman, or child will lose all power. You know that, so listen. This is what we'll do." She quickly explained to Polka and Polka, and they gravely nodded in agreement. "What are you standing and whispering about?" grumbled Grandpa Tomten. Fortunately, they didn't have time to answer, for at that moment Papa Tomten came in the door. "No, there wasn't any bowl of porridge yet," he said, "but there will be. Be patient, Grandpa." "Don't even think about it," said Mama Tomten. "Now it's time for Christmas dinner. Come and eat." They all sat down to Christmas soup, beer, and bread. They ate slowly and well. While they ate, they took turns telling stories about things that had happened in the past year. All of them were good storytellers, but Grandpa Tomten was especially good. Even though his stories were usually about things that had happened 150 years ago, that didn't matter. Finally, Mama Tomten turned to her children and asked, "Do you know what I know?" "No," one answered. "What?" a second questioned. "What do you know?" the third added. Mama whispered the two words that were magic to their ears. "Santa Claus? Oh, yes!" the three voices cried together. "We have to see him!" the children shouted and started on their way. "Wait a minute," Papa Tomten said. "We all want to see him." "What are you doing?" Grandpa Tomten interrupted. "Where are you going now in the middle of the night?" His voice quivered. "Why, we were having such a wonderful time." "Oh, Grandpa, we're going to see this Santa Claus fellow," said Mama Tomten as she took Grandpa Tomten's arm. "You remember, he's been around the farm now for several years. It's really Sigurd Riltavo, who dresses up in a red suit and a long white beard and calls himself Santa Claus. He comes with Christmas presents and hands them out. Don't you remember?" "What foolishness," muttered the old Tomten, but he followed them just the same. The Tomtens all knew exactly how to get into the house and climb to the top of the very tall cupboard that looked out over the dining room. The house was full of secret doors and passageways that only the mice and the Tomtens knew about. Soon they were sitting up on top of the cupboard, looking down at the family gathered around the dining room table. The farm family had just been served coffee and dessert, and now they sat and talked. The children stood near the windows and looked out. The smallest child, Anna, couldn't keep still. She ran back and forth from the window, questioning her grandmother. "When is Santa Claus coming? Who is Santa? Why hasn't he come yet?" Pilka asked the same questions as she sat on her mother's knee. Suddenly, they heard someone on the front porch, brushing snow from his boots. Their visitor knocked on the door. "It's Santa Claus! Come in!" the farm children shouted. "He's coming in," the Tomten children whispered to one another. In through the door walked a figure with a long, white beard and a sack over his back. He was dressed in a red jacket, and he wore a red stocking cap, just like the Tomtens. But he was as tall as Oscar the farmhand. Papa Tomten couldn't help but laugh. "What an insult," muttered Grandpa Tomten. "He's pretending to be a Tomten. I don't understand what's happening to the world." "Be quiet now, so we can all hear," Papa Tomten whispered, in between his snickers and chuckles. "Are there any good children here?" Santa Claus questioned in a deep voice. "Tch-tch-tch-tch." Papa Tomten shook his head, almost bursting with laughter. "He's not much of a Tomten. He doesn't know whether the children have been good or not. Did you hear that, Grandpa?" Papa Tomten asked his father. "He wonders whether there are any good children here." "Eh? My goodness," the old Tomten said. Mama Tomten and the Tomten children laughed. They knew that a true Tomten knew everything about a farm family. The pretend Santa Claus slowly sat down sleepily and said, "Good evening," and opened his sack. "Shh," said Papa Tomten. "He's taking out a present. The mittens for Anna from her grandmother. Someone should probably read the name out loud, so they know whose gift it is. But I doubt if Santa can read. We'll see." The presents were handed out one by one. The names and greetings were read aloud, and the torn wrappings were gathered in heaps. Whether reluctant or happy, each member of the farm family proudly accepted a present. With surprised, questioning glances, they would look around to see who might have given the gifts. Then, with anxious, excited hands, they returned to their places with their new possessions. The Tomtens watched with great interest, trying to guess whether the children would be pleased by their presents or not. They watched, listened, and commented on every detail. When the sack was empty, the farm family thanked Santa Claus. Then the Christmas celebration continued. The family sat and talked, cracked nuts, guessed answers to riddles, and danced around the Christmas tree. They played Blind Man's Bluff and Pin the Tail on the Donkey. The children played with their new toys, and Oscar beat everyone at arm wrestling. The time passed quickly as the Tomtens sat on top of the cupboard, enjoying the happiness and excitement that filled the room. Watching and listening to people was the Tomtens' favorite pastime, especially when the farm family was in such good spirits. As the children grew tired, the room became quieter. At that moment, the mother of the house raised her voice, just as she did every year, and asked if anyone would like some Christmas porridge. There were always a few who still had room for a little porridge, so the dessert bowls were set out on the table, and Augusta prepared to serve it. Mama Tomten had been waiting for this very moment. She was even more certain now than before that they had not set out a bowl of porridge for the Tomten. She also knew that, at any time now, the grandma would ask Anna whether she'd set out a bowl for him, and Anna would answer that Santa Claus had already been there and hadn't wanted any porridge. For all the porridge in the world, Mama Tomten couldn't let Papa Tomten hear that. He would be furious. She had to get him away at once. "Papa dear," she said quickly, "one of the sheep is stuck in her stall. You must hurry and help get her free." "But they were just going to serve the porridge. I want to see them serve mine. I haven't seen it for several years. There's always something." "Hurry, she's hurt. And fix the stall too. You should have done that long ago. Go on now." Papa Tomten sighed and dashed out through the door in the wall. Pilka sat on Grandpa Tomten's lap, and both had fallen asleep. That worked out just fine. "Now, children," said Mama Tomten, "we have to hurry. Remember what we decided, and don't forget, not a word to Papa. He would never get over it." Mama Tomten and Polka quickly ran down and hid under the bench next to the dining room table. Polka darted into the secret passageway that led to the big grandfather clock. Just as the father was beginning to serve the Christmas porridge, Polka managed, with all her strength, to turn the cogwheel. Immediately, the clock struck 11. "What's this?" said the father. "Why, it just struck 10." He looked at the clock and then at his own watch. Everyone turned around and gazed silently as the big hand moved slowly, but all too quickly, across the face of the clock. "What's happening here?" the father asked. He got up and walked slowly toward the clock. There was a dead silence in the room, except for the clock's ticking and whirring. As soon as the clock started to strike 12, Mama Tomten and Polka darted out from under the bench, and as quick as mice, climbed up onto the father's chair. As everyone stared at the grandfather clock, Mama Tomten jumped up onto the table and peeked out from behind a bowl of porridge. With one mighty heave, Mama Tomten lifted the porridge bowl from the table and handed it down to Polka. Then, hopping down herself, first to the chair and then to the floor, Mama Tomten took the bowl from Polka, who quickly followed her. No one had seen them. The clock struck the 12th time. All they had to do now was to get away quickly without being seen. Papa Tomten was probably already on his way back. "How extraordinary!" the father exclaimed, looking at the others wonderingly. He wasn't sure whether he should laugh or be afraid. "Is this a joke or a ghost?" The others looked just as frightened and uncertain. The father opened the clock door and checked the weights. The Tomtens were almost out of the room when Mama Tomten remembered that there wasn't butter on the porridge. The butter on top of the Tomtens' Christmas porridge is just as important as the rice itself. They had to go back. "We haven't any time," whispered Polka. "Oh, yes, we have. Come on, quick!" Back to the table they went. The mother's chair was empty. She was a few steps away, anxiously staring at the clock. Mama climbed onto the chair and then up onto the table. Thank goodness, the butter dish was right there. Without even looking around, she took the butter knife, scooped out a great dab of butter, and threw it, plop, straight down into the porridge. That was when she noticed that Anna was watching her. Anna was sitting right there, and she had seen everything. Not even a Tomten can throw butter in front of the eyes of a 4-year-old without being seen. Their eyes met for a long, still, silent second. Then Mama Tomten slipped down to the floor and disappeared from the room. At first, Anna hadn't seen Mama Tomten by the butter dish. But when she did realize who was there, she was so busy looking that it was a while before she could say anything. "Mama," she finally said, "a Tomten was here and took some butter." When the grandfather clock stopped whirring and striking, everyone began to talk at once and sat down to finish their porridge. "What did you say, dear?" Anna's mother asked. "Now what's all this?" said the father. "Someone has taken my porridge. Anders, have you gone and hidden it?" "No, Papa, I haven't done anything." "It was the Tomtens," said Anna. "I saw Mother Tomten take some butter and throw it into a bowl of porridge. And there was another Tomten, and they ran out with the bowl. Out there!" She pointed at the porch. The father looked at his little daughter with an astonished, surprised look in his eyes. He nodded in a serious way, but behind his mustache he was smiling. Then his smile disappeared, but his eyebrows stayed up, so he looked both surprised and thoughtful. The father rose from the table and went and opened the front door. The others crowded around him. In the snow on the front porch, there was a round hollow surrounded by many small tracks, tiny footprints disappearing into the darkness toward the barn. They all saw, with their own eyes, how the footprints gradually faded away. Anders wanted to run out to the barn and look for the Tomtens, but his father stopped him. Anders wanted to run out to the barn and look for the Tomtens, but his father stopped him. "It's no use," the father said. "You'll never find them." They went back inside, thinking to themselves that they would never forget the Tomtens' Christmas porridge again. Papa Tomten sat in his chair, smoking his pipe and feeling pleasantly full and happy. He was pleased with Christmas Eve and the year that had passed. He was pleased with himself, and that the farm and its family were pleased with him. They had shown him that by giving him a truly fine serving of porridge. Grandpa Tomten and the children were sleeping, and Mamma Tomten stood by the window looking out. The lights were growing dim in the windows of the farmhouse. It was time to sleep. She wondered whether the farm family would remember the Tomten next year, or the year after, or in 10 years. And she wondered if she would be harmed because she was seen by little Anna. But perhaps it wasn't so bad when it was a little child who saw her. "What are you thinking about, dear?" Papa Tomten asked her. "Oh, nothing special," answered Mamma Tomten. "Just that I like the people who live on our farm. They take good care of it." She rested her hands on Papa Tomten's shoulders. "And I was thinking what a clever fellow I have who sees to everything that they can't manage themselves." Papa Tomten sighed contentedly. "I wonder if I'll get as much butter on my porridge next year." The end.